What does negotiate mean? I know this sounds basic, but to bargain or discuss both sides of an issue until an agreement is reached. For example, a contract. Pretty simple. It's that no yelling in brackets that I have to stress. That it means to bargain or discuss. It does not mean to yell and get into an argument with each other over what's right and what's wrong. Pretty much, I think when you get into an argument, when you're trying to negotiate, it pretty much puts a nail in the coffin of whatever you're trying to do. When you start arguing instead of discussing, I'm right and you're wrong, is a bad negotiating tactic. And I know, Scott, if you tried that with your used car salesman there, you wouldn't have gotten very far, that's for sure. So try to keep calm throughout the negotiating process. It does not mean if I find a solution to the problem, I'm sorry about the spelling error. If I find a solution to the problem, I will get my commission. There's a quote out there somewhere that says, if you put your client's interests first, your dreams will be realized beyond your wildest expectations. And forgive me, I can't remember who said it. But if you put your client's interests first, your dreams will be recognized beyond your wildest expectations. I know a lot of you out there, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm negotiating, thinking about my commissions. It's only, let's face it, it's only kind of normal and, normal human behavior that you want to make money, I think, to a large extent. But real estate's one of those things, one of those businesses, I should say, that if you can somehow forget about the money that you may or may not make and work with your client's interest as best, it means that you're going to have a successful business. It does not mean that you should give up because the buyer and seller is crazy. From my side of the desk, and I know I've talked to a lot of you that I see with us today, that, oh my goodness, the buyer and seller are crazy. We just can't deal with them anymore. It's not just a time to give up. Can't you find a common ground? Okay. Negotiate does not mean I'll never find a solution to this problem. In my life and in my world, and I've been in sales and commission sales pretty much all my life, there was always a solution somewhere. It's whether you could dig deep enough to find it. It's like peeling off the layers of skin from an onion, to get to the good part in the onion. And can you get and drill down enough to get to the problem? And here's a good one that I run into from agents complaining to me. Why is the buyer, the seller, agent wasting my time? Why does that agent keep calling me when I've told them already 20 times that I'm not changing the completion date? Well, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe there is some middle ground that you can find to make the deal work. Think twice is what I'm trying to say with these here. Always try to find a solution instead of just no. No is not negotiating. No is being a you-know-what. And usually you can find some middle ground. Now, we've just come out of a very interesting time in the real estate market where negotiating has just about gone out the window during, basically up to the end of February and pretty much a year and a half prior to the end of February. Negotiating was a lost art. It was, here's my best offer. I'm trying to beat out 30 other offers. And so, it's not there. I don't need to negotiate. Here's the pile of money. Forget all the conditions, and that's the end of the story. I even had some agents come to me in late March and said, what's a counter offer? Well, a counter offer is basically a form of negotiation. They'd only started in the business a year ago. They'd only been in this crazy, wacky market, and they had totally forgotten how to handle a counter offer. And even what one person said, what is a counter offer? Which is kind of scary. But a counter offer is a form of negotiation, of course. And so I hope some of you get some benefit of this. And remember, If you don't remember how to negotiate, hopefully this will help. And if you do know how to negotiate, then hopefully some tips will come through. Time equals frustration. Don't get frustrated. Everyone is negotiating for what they believe is best. Negotiating can take time. Time equals frustration. Let's talk about a car jam up on the Don Valley parking lot. You're on the Don Valley, you're stopped dead, and you're frustrated with the traffic, right? You're so frustrated with the traffic, but actually you're not frustrated with traffic. You're frustrated because of the amount of time that it is taking. All right, the traffic is the cause of your frustration, but what really is happening is that it's wasting your time, right? And so negotiating, and I've had many agents tell me this, oh, I've had to negotiate back and forth, and it's taking so much of my time to try to tell the other person, blah, blah, blah. Time in real estate is something that you should all have plenty of. And the reason I can say that is because you are running your own businesses. If you are going to open a store on Yonge Street and run your own business, you're going to work 80 hours a week in that store when it first starts. And even as it keeps going, you're going to work an awful lot. In real estate, you guys should all have lots of time. Negotiating should not be a frustration. It should be a path to complete a deal. It should not be a waste of time. So what does negotiate mean? Negotiate means trying to find some kind of common ground that will satisfy both parties. I know that might sound very basic to everybody, but that really is what it is. It may be between a buyer and a seller, or it may be time to negotiate a commission reduction or a cashback with your buyers or your sellers. It's time to start negotiating when there has been an objection to whatever is proposed. Now, the whole point with this sentence, it's time to start negotiating when there has been an objection to whatever is proposed, is don't give in. Don't give in right away. And I know that there's some cultures and some people out there that just love to give cashbacks, just love to give a cashback to somebody. Oh my goodness gracious. And so somebody says to you, oh, there's another agent that'll give me a $10,000 cashback, a $5,000 cashback. What do? Do you just say, yeah, okay, right? Yeah, okay, I'll do that. Well, don't do that. Negotiate it. This is your income. This is the money that you're making. Don't give in quite so fast. If a buyer says, I can't go any higher, or the seller says, I want the buyer to go higher, and the buyer says, I can't go any higher, how can you negotiate that? You just say, oh, well, the offer's dead. Well, no, don't do that. Step back and think about a solution. Step back and think, how can I possibly negotiate a better cashback or a higher commission? Or how can I negotiate even with a seller to get this listing? Step back to think about what you're doing here. Just don't agree or just don't give up, is what I'm trying to say. Have faith in yourself. So what is an objection? And is the objection simply a question, or is it a real objection? What do you think about a paint color as a question, not an objection? So when you're negotiating, you should be negotiating over an objection. For example, I don't want to work with you because another agent has promised me a $5,000 cashback. That is an objection to working with you. What do you think about a paint color is a question, not an objection. So you do have to think about the differences to make sure that you're not negotiating when you don't have to negotiate, right? Now, if they said to you, if a buyer says to you, I don't want to buy this house because the paint is green. Well, can you negotiate your way out of that? Can you overcome that? The answer is yes. But just thinking about a paint color is a question, not an objection. So I know that sounds a little flaky, I guess, is the way I want to put it. But there is a slight difference between a question and an objection. So you do want to double check to make sure that you're negotiating something that is real. So, how to negotiate. Step 1, rapport. Have you got a good rapport with the other party? Do you have a good relationship with them? Are you friendly? So let's talk about another agent. Another agent says to you, let's say they're the listing agent and you're the buyer agent. The agent says that closing date just isn't going to work. You have two paths that you can take. You can say, well, this is the only date that's going to work for my buyer. And I guess in many ways, that is a form of negotiation. Okay, just being hard at it, and not giving in, I guess, is one way to negotiate. But perhaps there's a better way to do it. Perhaps you say, yeah, my buyer, really does want that closing date, and I wonder, maybe we can work that out. But while we're thinking about how we can work this out, how's your business going anyways? Right? Like, how come you can't talk to the other agent to make things work? I happen to know that the top agents, at least in the Richmond Hill office, I can't say for the other offices because I'm not sure, but it's probably true, is that the agents that are doing very, very well in this business, they are familiar with other agents. They know them. I know some agents here know other agents at other brokerages. They know the name of their children. They've met their parents. They've gone out for lunch together, things like that. And then when it comes time to negotiate a deal with that agent, the whole process becomes more friendly. It becomes professional. And usually they come up with a solution because they know each other. It's simple. Asking a buyer who wants a cashback, how their business is doing. So if a buyer wants a cashback, and let's face it, we're not crazy here. We know most buyers want some kind of a cashback. Can you turn the tables around to ask them in their business, do you give cashbacks to people? Try to negotiate, try to think about it, try to build a relationship with the buyer. How's your business doing, Mr. Buyer? What's new in your business? And then eventually, because you built that rapport, then you can ask that question, do you give cashbacks, right? But you can't just ask that question, do you give cashbacks, without building that rapport first, okay? The buyer's just gonna put their back up. They're gonna get the hairs on the back of their neck standing up straight and go, geez, what a hard guy Mazza is. Sorry, Mazza, I see your name there. What a hard lady Mazza is dealing with her. Man, she's tough. I can't stand it. If Mazza would instead talk to the buyer about their business, learn about what they're doing, have a common ground and all that, all of a sudden that negotiation becomes easier. Sorry, I didn't mean to pick on you too hard there, Mazza. Step 2, after you've built a relationship, let's have an analysis of the problem. Have you actually done your homework? Are you aware of the exact nature of the problem? And once again, a closing date is a good example. Can you actually explain to the agent why the buyer wants a particular closing date? Do you have a reasonable explanation? And a very reasonable explanation in one way is the buyer has purchased another house. Of course, maybe you don't want to say that because then the listing agent's going to think, oh, they're desperate. They have to close on that date. Let's ask for $10,000 more, right? So you do have to think about what you are saying to the other agent. It really suits my buyer to be able to move on that date because they've checked with the moving company and it works really well for them. Plus, they have a whole bunch of friends and family that can help them on that moving date because they're really trying to save money so that they can close properly on the completion date. That sounds a lot better than they have to close on that date because they bought another house. All right. So have you done your homework? Have you really talked to the people involved? Have you talked to the buyer about the closing date? And can you explain that properly? So an analysis of the problem is really, really, really important. And have you framed your conversation, in this case with the other agent, to not give the ship away, and so that the other agent thinks that they can charge more money for the house, but excuse me, can you actually give a reasonable explanation? Once you've got your relationship built up and you have your analysis of the problem, now it's time for the debate, okay? Nothing can be done without discussing, okay? And so, of course, you want to do this amongst each other. You want to evaluate the pros and cons, okay? And very bolded and underlined, don't lose your temper or your cool even. Temper might be a little extreme, but don't lose your cool in this round. Always remain calm and composed throughout the negotiation. As soon as, let's face it, we're all human beings. As soon as you get yelled at, what's your automatic response is to yell back, right? You wind up, your brain goes into some kind of overload mode, and you just want to, you're just so upset that you're being yelled at that you just want to yell back. Somehow you have to remain calm and composed throughout the debate process, okay? An objection is, in psychological terms, an objection is called an objection wall. And in that objection, in that person's brain, there's an objection wall, okay? And you have choices. You can try to climb over that wall by debating, or you can try to take the wall down and then debate. And we're going to talk about that in a minute or two. But step one of step three, if you want to call it, is you have to remain calm, because that wall in that person's head is just going to get thicker and thicker and higher if you are starting to lose your cool, okay? And I'll tell you why most agents lose their cool in the negotiation process. And that is they're only thinking about their commissions instead of thinking about the best interests of their client. You know, there's a lot of people that have to feed their kids out of, you know, the real estate income that they're making. They're saving for university. Scott needs to buy a new car, you know, all of that kind of thing. And you know, you start to get wound up because it's your commissions, and you start to lose your cool because you're not getting the message across. But the reason why you're not getting your message across is because you're thinking of yourself instead of your client. I can't stress it enough, you guys. So propose. So now you've negotiated back and forth, okay? And now you need to propose, you know, kind of, you know, what you think is what you want to do. Does it mean you have to agree at this stage? And the answer is no, it might still be negotiating. When it comes time to your commission or cashback, have you proved your worth? Okay. Can you look a buyer in the eye? No, can you look a seller in the eye and say, I understand that there's been another agent here that'll do it for the seller side of 1% commission. But I want to show you that for my 1.5%, that this is what I will do. Now, I have to pull back from February back into 2021, where that negotiation skill is pretty much out the window because, you know, put a house up for sale, 20 offers, end of story. In today's world, you guys, you just can't give it all away. It's becoming much harder to sell a house, especially if you have a listing. It's going to be days on market, longer and longer. The seller is going to be calling you saying, How come I've had no showings? And I know a lot of you on here have had that experience already. How come I have no showings? Don't sell yourself cheap when the market slows down just to get a listing. You're going to get a listing at 1%. That's going to take you 60 days to sell. And then you're going to look at your paycheck and you're going to go, wow, that wasn't worth it. And what happens when the market slows down, interestingly enough, all those low cost, low competitor guys out there, they start to really hurt because now they just can't sell a house really fast. To take a buyer out now isn't show a house, put in an offer, show a house, put in an offer, show a house, put in an offer. Hopefully you win one. Now it's show 30 houses, show 40 houses, show 50 houses. Buyers are now in the driver's seat. Don't give away everything you've got to a cashback to a buyer. Be careful, okay? It's a proposal. You're still negotiating at this stage. So hopefully you come to an agreement. Congratulations, get it in writing. Reminder, verbal does not count in real estate. All negotiations must be reduced to writing, and this does not mean an email or a text or Instagram or Facebook Messenger or any of those wonderful things that you guys use. It means a signature on a real estate document. Nothing counts until it's signed on the bottom line. Please do not forget that, okay? And so 5 steps, and I think really the most important step was step 1. Do you have some rapport with that agent, with that seller, with that buyer? And once again, right, flashing down here to step 5, as the market is changing, now is the time to really slow down and think about how you can negotiate a deal, okay? And think of your client's best interest first, not your commission. So there are 4 main different personality types. And if you can figure out what personality type you're dealing with, negotiation is going to become easier, or at least maybe not easier, but not quite as difficult, I guess. And this doesn't matter if it's a buyer or a seller or another agent, okay? There are 4 different types. There's the dominant types. They're bold and skeptical. They're rah, 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 and I'm always careful about what I'm doing, okay? But I'm in control. There's influence. They are bold as well, but they're more accepting of suggestions. Steadiness people, they're cautious and accepting. And conscientious people, cautious and skeptical. So they're like the double whammy. They could be the hard ones too. So let's have a look at each type of personality trait. And there's all, I have to be clear here, there's all sorts of sub-variants of each type of personality. You know, they float in between. There's combos between dominance and influence, and combos between steadiness and consciousness, or conscientious, I should say. You know, there's all sorts of little things. So we're just looking at the main personality types here. But this is pretty much pretty big and be able to define who you're talking to without getting too carried away. And we're not psychologists to try to figure this out. We're just poor real estate salespeople after all. Dominant, they want to win, okay? They'll be easily irritated and will respond with hostility or intolerance. They respond to logic and facts, not someone's gut feeling. Folks, on this webinar, we've all had this. We've all had the dominant person, right? Oh, why are you calling me now? I said I don't want that. I wanted this. I thought I had made it clear to you that I wanted that, not that. And I want this and I don't want that, right? We've all had that tone of voice come at us. I know we all have. They're the easiest ones to spot. They're coming from a mile away, okay? They want to win, okay? If you say to a dominant person, I feel that this may be the right house for you, you've already lost them. They don't feel, okay? They're the dominant personality, okay? How do you recognize it? They want control. Just about everything. Hey, Mr. Buyer, how about we go out at 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon? No, 3 o'clock won't work for me. I want to go out at 3:30. Okay. Even though 3 o'clock, by the way, would work perfectly for them. All right. We all know that 3 o'clock would work perfectly for them, but they want to control the situation. They do not waste time. Don't waste their time. You better be organized, okay? The dominant personality knows what they want, and they will respond pretty much to one thing and one thing only, and that is logic. As an agent, you better know your stuff when you're talking to a dominant personality. Dominant personalities basically know more than you do, or at least pretend that they know more than you do, at least try to tell you that they know more than you do. But either way, out of any of those cases, you better know your stuff, okay? Because they either, and probably do know more than you do, or pretend that they know more than you do, and you may never know that. So you better have your T's crossed, your I's dotted. You better know your stuff in a dominant personality. It's the only way that you can kind of meet their common ground. I have found with dominant personalities, when I'm dealing with a dominant personality, that I kind of have to be dominant too. I kind of have to push back a little bit. But the only way I can do that is I know what I'm talking about. I know my stuff inside out, backwards and forwards. And that way I can kind of meet them on an equal kind of footing, to kind of get that good rapport with them. Otherwise, you know what? They're going to run all over you. Okay. Just let me check the chat here. No, exactly, Andy. Andy asked, so dominant personalities are not interested in feelings or options. Well, oops, sorry. There's a difference between a feeling and an option, right? A feeling, I would never say to a dominant personality, how do you feel about this? Okay. Instead, perhaps you would ask them, do you like it? Okay. Same question, just formed a different way. Okay. Options are always good. I mean, if there's two houses, do you know your stuff? Which house has the granite countertop? Which one has the finished basement? All right. Which one has the better closing date? All right. Which one has the better price? Which one has the better chance of getting something that the dominant personality likes? So options, yeah, you still need to know your stuff and be able to present options, but don't frame it as a feeling. Okay. What would you like to do? What do you think is a better question for a dominant personality? Okay, good question. The next one is an influencer. These are the friendly people. These are the nice people to deal with most of the time. They are prone to keep people happy, and as a result, may be reluctant to provide others with constructive feedback. So even though they're really nice people, okay, they're the friendly people. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's just wonderful. Oh, what a beautiful day, you know, where the dominant personality just says like, okay, let's get on with the business here. The problem with the influencer is that they may not give you feedback. And so will you ever know if they like the house? The dominant personality is going, I hate this house. Where the influencer will go, maybe. We've all had that in our sales. This kind of person, they won't necessarily tell you how they feel. They may not pay adequate attention to follow through or attention to detail. I would say out of the 4 personality types, the influencer is probably going to be late for their appointment. Okay, they are optimistic and they like excitement. So if you're dealing with an influencer, you always have to be positive. Wow, this is a great house in a great location. And by the way, you should be positive all the time in your sales, right? And you should be enthusiastic all the time in your sales, but it's specifically with the influencer because they kind of hide a little bit. They may not tell you exactly how they are feeling. and what they're thinking all the time. So it's a bit harder to kind of pull the what they're thinking out of them. And the way to do that is to become friendly and be optimistic and be excited about what they're doing. This is very many times a first-time home buyer. So how do you recognize an influencer? They're talkative when they meet new people. And so you're making a phone call to a buyer that was recommended that you give them a call. Hi, Mrs. Buyer, John here from Century 21 Heritage Group. How are you today? Well, John, thank you so much for calling. You know, we were thinking about real estate just the other day, and I happened to be talking to my friend who said I should give you a call. He says you're really good. Blah, 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 and on and on and on and on and on. You're talking to an influencer, okay? When you meet them, do they come out and, you know, hey, how are you? How's it going? So nice to meet you, right? Are we allowed to shake hands anymore? I don't even know. But shake hands, you know, that kind of thing. They're magnetic personalities. You draw to them. They've got nice smiles, that kind of thing. They're not standoffish. They're people, okay? They're friendly. They'll tell jokes in a serious situation, okay, for sure. You know, they'll try to keep things lighthearted. And if you say to them things like, geez, I think you're making a really good decision here, they're going to love you, okay? As an agent, you better be Mr. and Mrs. Friendly and relationship oriented with an influencer. They want to be friends, okay? Almost the opposite of the dominant personality. The steadiness personality. These are highly motivated people to help others, but at the same time will maintain their own needs, okay? They want to work together. They want to share the driving of the bus, okay? They're calm, they're patient, okay? They're thoughtful, methodical, they're steady people, okay? But the big thing with the steadiness people is they will be upset when their routine changes, okay? And if the change disrupts their routine, then they're going to be hard to draw back in because they just like to be like this, just nice and level. Okay, everything is good. We can work with the real estate agent. You know, we can be with you, but don't throw us off. Okay, don't have a last minute change of plans. And a great example of that is, I know Mr. Steady Person that we had an appointment at 3 o'clock. I understand you've changed your life for that appointment at 3 o'clock, but I can't make it. I have to bring my daughter to the doctor's. Can we please do it at 4:30 instead? A very valid reason to call anybody, but the worst one that you can do with a steadiness person, okay? You want to stick to their routine as much as possible. You also have to remain calm and patient, okay? They may ask, what should I do or what can I do? All right, when you're talking to this person. And so what can I do? Well, this is a great time to give them the HomeSpot app, okay? Yeah, check out this app that we have. It's got all the sold prices, et cetera, et cetera. No, you don't need to use House Sigma anymore. We've got our own in-house apps, got all the same information as House Sigma on it, and you can communicate directly through me to this app. Check this out, okay? Check this out, check that out. You know, what should I do? Have you been to a mortgage agent? You know, that kind of thing. When is a good time for you? Remember, you don't want to upset their routine, okay? They're going to ask you lots of questions. That's the steady person. That's almost the biggest giveaway that you're dealing with the steady person, okay? They'll not be rushed and they hesitate, okay? They say, we'll get back to you, but they probably will. They're calm and they're organized and they're patient, okay? And here it is. As an agent, you need to be calm at all times. It's as simple as that. If you're starting to get all excited and you're buzzing around, you're going to lose that steady person because you're going to be upsetting their routine. They may be the hardest to negotiate out of all four because they do not easily accept change. Okay, so they're going to ask lots of questions. They're very careful in what they do. They're very methodical people. They're steady. The last one is conscientious. Best be described as detail-oriented. They enjoy the chance to demonstrate their expertise and share what they know. We would sometimes call these people know-it-alls, all right? We know more than you do. They are driven by logic and analysis. They even have a tendency to overanalyze the situation. They will look for answers from trusted friends for sure. They're gonna shop around, okay? They're gonna check things out themselves, make sure that they are happy with what the situation is before they make a decision. They're the deep thinkers, basically. All right. How do you recognize one? They're always on time. All right. They're reliable, always. They pay huge attention to detail. Enough that it's going to drive you crazy. And we've all had these kind of people. Oh, what does this section mean in a buyer representation agreement that says indemnification? What does that mean? Right? Plan work to the last detail. They're going to have this down pat. They're going to have everything figured out. They're going to be calling you 5 weeks before closing and going, how am I going to get the keys to the house? All right. But they're also probably going to be the most committed to you. And so they're probably not the ones that are going to ghost you and disappear off the face of the earth. All right. As an agent, once again, your tip, you better have your paperwork and everything you do perfect, all right? Because they're going to analyze and remember, overanalyze everything. They're not going to make mistakes, okay? And you better not be late with the conscientious type because they're always going to be on time. And so those 4 different personality traits, the dominant, the influencer, the steady person, and the conscientious person, that is for buyers and sellers, for sure, so that you can figure out who you're dealing with. But who's the missing person in this? The other agent. And guess what? It applies to the other agent as well. Who's that dominant agent? Well, we can all think of some dominant agents out there, can't we? I'm not going to name anybody, but there's some dominant agents out there that you guys have to deal with, I know, that they're just going to say blah, 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 blah. And that's it. That's all. My client's not going to do this. My client's not going to do that. And too bad for you. Well, now you have to be able to respond with logic, okay, to that agent. You got to get them thinking and get them off their high horse, okay? For the influencer, you have to try to make sure that you are on the same common ground as they are, okay? The steady agent, well, I don't know if my client's going to accept that or not. Well, can you prove your point? And the conscientious agent is might be one of the hardest ones to deal with other than buyers and sellers on the other side. The conscientious person, they're going to be double checking your paperwork big time. And like, do I believe this agent? Look at this mess of paperwork that he just sent me. Like, it's missing this, he's missing that, he's missing that. Hey, Mr. Seller, we got this offer here, but gee whiz, it's just a total mess. I don't know if the buyer is going to be able to close by looking at the work of the agent. And so the 4 personality types deal with working with agents just as much as it works with buyers and sellers. If you can identify your personality type, you're going to have an easier time. Negotiating with another agent. Rule number 1, whose side are you on? It's not about your commission, okay? It's about the price. It's about the closing date. It's about the conditions in the offer, all right? It's not about your commission. Put your money in your back pocket. Think about your client first. Negotiate a cashback with the buyer. And we're going to go through some examples. But aren't you better than the other agent? Aren't you worth more than the other agent? Can't you look a buyer in the eye and say, yeah, but if you work with me, I'll save you money on the deal. I'll save you a lot more than the $5,000 cash back that you're getting because I'm going to negotiate. Okay. So you do want to talk to that agent. I'm sorry about the buyer, about how much you're looking for a cash back. And then you have to negotiate when they will receive it and what happens if the property does not close. That's why I'm just going to steer you towards your Google Drive and make sure you have that cashback letter signed by the buyer, that they understand that they do not get the cash back until the property is closed and the commission has been received. All right. Some buyers, and I had another agent in here just last week who wanted the cash back on the day of closing because they needed the money to close. Well, what happens if you give them the money and then they don't close? That can be a problem for sure. Be smart about your negotiating. A reduction in commissions for sellers. Rule number 1, start high. Oh, I love hearing agents that go in to a seller's and they say, oh, yeah, my commission, 3.5%, 1% for me, 2.5% for the cooperating brokerage. And then the seller looks at you and says, will you do it for 3? Oh, why didn't you start at 4.5? Why didn't you start at 5? I love telling stories about my own relatives. For my own relatives, I started at 10% commission because I knew that they were the hardest and the worst people to deal with. There's nothing like trying to sell your brother and sister a house, right? They're going to drive you around the bend, right? And expect it for free. All right. That's a great time to talk to them and ask them if they work for free. All right. Don't give away the ship early to your relatives, you guys. My goodness. All right. When you're talking about commissions for a seller, it was more difficult February and before, like we've talked about already. But now it's going to take a long time to sell the house. It's not going to be so easy. Buyers have basically disappeared. And I know that if there's other managers on the meeting here today, that they'll all agree that we're getting a phone call a day. And every day we're getting a phone call, at least one, if not more, that says, John, what do I do? I've had the house listed for 8 days. There's been no showings for 5 days. Well, I hope you got your commission at 5% because you're going to have to work really hard to get this sold, right? You're going to have to do a lot more work in terms of social media, your website, staging, whatever, time, keeping the sellers calm, all of that kind of stuff. So tell the seller, listen, I'll do it for you for 5%. Now, of course, the seller has a stroke right on the spot. And then you say, look if we get an offer, I should not say if, when we get an offer, if the deal is close, but not quite what you want, then let's negotiate my commissions at that time. Okay. But Mr. Seller, if I get you the price that you want, don't penalize me for a job well done. I use that line throughout my real estate career. Don't penalize me for a job well done. Okay. And aren't you better than the other agent? What are you doing that is better than the other agent? And in business, what's that called? It's called, how do you differentiate yourself from your competition? And in many cultures out there, the way that agents are differentiating themselves from their competition is by simply lowering their commissions. Oh yeah, I'll do it for 4. I'll do it for 3.5. I'll do it for 3. I'll do it for 2.5. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no problem. Right? Don't do that. Why are you giving money away when you can prove that you are better than the other agent? Are you taking the time to negotiate with your seller? Negotiating getting a buyer rep signed. Rule number 1, know what the document says. Can you explain the BRA to a buyer? The number 1 objection of why buyers will not sign a BRA, they don't know what it means. They don't understand what it says. It's never, ever, ever been explained to them properly. I can guarantee you something, guys. If you take the time to explain a document to your buyer or a listing document to a seller or an agreement of purchase and sale to the buyer or the seller, you're going to get one of those guys, the buyer or the seller, going back to you. You know what they're going to say? They're going to say, wow, nobody has ever explained that document to me before. You're amazing. Okay? Because 50% of the agents out there have no clue what these documents say. No idea at all. Take your time and learn what the document says. And back to the different personality types, for the influencer and for the conscientious person, I'm sorry, not the influencer, for the dominant and the conscientious person, you better know what these things say because they've read them. Okay? Can you explain the difference between a customer and a client? All the simple stuff that you were taught so long ago in school. That's how you start to negotiate. What are we leading up to here? You can negotiate if you're negotiating from a position of strength. Do you know what the document says? Getting a listing. Be prepared. I mean, this is easy. Be prepared. Do you have a listing presentation and a CMA? I've had an agent in here just, was it today, Tuesday? So sometime early last week that said they lost the listing and they didn't get it. They were up against 2 other agents. And I said, well, show me the CMA. Well, they didn't have one. Well, like, you know, how do you negotiate? How can you even start negotiating if you're not prepared? Okay. Other agents will be prepared, you guys. So, negotiating 101. Negotiating 101. How do you go about doing this? When there is an objection, repeat the objection back to the person. I know a lot of you have heard me say this before. It works, you guys. Repeat the objection back to the person. Step 2, empathize and understand and relate to your own personal experience. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to get them to agree with you. You want 2 yes answers in a row. So if I understand you correctly, there was another agent in here who promised you a $5,000 cash back. Is that right? Well, the other person has to say yes. If, oh, you know what, Mr. Buyer, I understand where you're coming from. If I was looking at buying a house and I'm thinking, gee whiz, what can I get for a cash back? And another agent has offered you $5,000 and they would have offered me $5,000. I'd probably be thinking the same way as you and I would go with that other agent. Is that what you're thinking? And there's only one answer to that is yes. Okay. And in terms of sales, that takes that objection wall that we talked about earlier down. What are you doing here? All you're doing here is getting to know the person, that they get the feeling that you understand them, that you can work with them because your relationship with them, you're empathizing with them, you're understanding them, you got what their message is. Okay. Then you can try to overcome the objection. Can I share something with you, or can I ask you a question after you have kind of really made sure that you understand the objection and that you agree with them that it's a valid objection? No matter how much you hate the objection, you empathize and understand with them about that objection. Okay, so you repeat the objection back to the person and empathize and understand and relate to your own personal experience, and then ask the question to overcome the objection. So, why won't your sellers accept the price, closing date, or conditions? Okay, so you're now the buyer agent and you're talking to the other agent, and the other agent has said to you, my seller won't accept a financing condition in the offer. What do you say? You don't say, why not? Okay, this is what you say. You say, so if I understand you correctly, you're telling me that your seller won't accept a financing condition. Is that right? What's the choice that the agent has to say? The only choice that the agent has to say is yes. Okay. Then you relate it to your own experience. Yeah, I know what you mean. I had a seller a little while ago, and they had an offer with a financing condition. They decided they didn't want to take it. And you know what? If I was selling my own house in today's market as well, where probably I can get an offer with another without a financing condition, I probably wouldn't take it. And I guess that's what your seller is thinking. Is that right? And the only answer there is yes. Okay. So what have I done? I've understood, I've agreed, and I've empathized with that agent. Okay. Well, can I ask you a question? Remember, right? Can I ask you a question? I've repeated the objection back. I've empathized and understood. Can I ask you a question? And what can the agent say? The agent's not going to say no, right? I can't ask me any questions. The agent's going to say, yeah, sure. Well, can I ask you, perhaps is your seller willing to accept a financing condition if we only make it 3 days instead of 5 days? Now, if you would have said that question right at the beginning, the agent says, no, the seller won't accept a condition with financing. If you would have said to them, you think your seller will accept 3 days instead of 5 days in the condition, guess what you're doing? You're trying to climb over the objection wall in their head. If you agree and understand and empathize with them, you've taken the wall down and you have a few minutes to try to suggest something that's reasonable. Because what are you doing? You're being friendly. There's no secret here. Okay? Try that. All right. Try to repeat back, understand, and then try to overcome the objection. Another agent will give me a bigger cash back. Oh, so Mr. Buyer, if I understand you correctly, you've been talking to another agent that will give you a $10,000 cash back where I've only offered you $5,000 cash back. Is that right? What can the buyer say? They have to say yes. That's just what they've told you. Okay. Then the next step is, you know what, Mr. Buyer? I think I understand exactly where you're coming from, because if I was looking at buying a house and I could get $10,000 instead of $5,000 from an agent, I think I would probably go with that other agent too. And I guess that's what you're thinking. Is that right? And what's the answer? The answer has to be a yes. I've repeated the objection back to the person. Number 2, I've empathized and understood and related to my own personal experience. Can I share something with you, Mr. Buyer? Right now, the wall is down. The objection wall is down. Can I share something with you, Mr. Buyer? Yeah, sure. Well, the interesting part about that, when somebody's offering you a cashback like that, have they just offered that right off the bat to you? And let's face it, most agents do. So the buyer says, yeah, no, we were talking just like we're talking, and he offered me 10,000. Well, Mr. Buyer, I'm not going to give in so easily to you. I'm still going to try to stick to that $5,000 because I'm a better negotiator than that other agent. I think because of my higher negotiation skills, I'm going to negotiate and save you thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars on an agreement of purchase and sale. So it might seem like you're getting a great deal from this person, but let's face it, he's giving away $5,000 of his income. What does he care what you pay for the house? I care for what you pay for the house, and I will negotiate for you. So what do you think? How about we settle at, how about 7,000 and negotiate with them? Why not make an extra 1,000 or 2 or 3,000? Why not, right? Another example. Another agent said 3.5 commission, total commission. This is a seller, obviously. And you said 4.5%. So if I understand you correctly, Mr. Seller, you've had another agent here that has given you the listing and 3.5% commission. Is that right? Yes. I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Seller, because if I was selling my own house and I had 2 agents and one was saying 3.5 and one was saying 4.5%, I'd probably lean a little bit towards the 3.5% agent because, hey, I'm saving 1%, $1 million house, $10,000. And I guess that's what you're thinking. Is that right? It's only one answer, you guys, and that's yes again. can I share something with you? Or actually, no, let's do another one. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Seller? They're going to say yes. Remember, we have choices. Can I share something with you, or can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? Yeah, sure. What do you do for a living, Mr. Seller? And ask them what they do for a living. And they say, that that they're a teacher. And you paint the picture then of them going to work. Well, Mr. Seller, let me paint you a picture. You go to work tomorrow, and you go to the coffee room in the morning, and the principal comes up to you and says to you, you know what, Mr. Seller, we love your work here. The students love you. We love you. You teach the football team afterwards. You're always involved in extracurricular activity. But now, because of all that, we want you to work for 50% less money. And how do I come up with that 50% less money, Mr. Seller? Is because the cooperating brokerage is going to get 2.5% commission. The other agent said 3.5, so he's getting 1%, and I'm saying 4.5%, so I'm getting 2%. That agent is cutting their income by 50%. So, Mr. Seller, how hard are you going to work for 50% less money in your teaching job? And there's only one answer they can give you, and not very hard, right? And then you can look at them and say, well, once again, here's what I'm going to do differently for you. Here's what I'm going to do for you to get the best price for your house. Let's not worry about my commission right now. If it comes close, let's negotiate at that time. But Mr. Seller, if I get you what you want for your house, don't penalize me for doing a job well done. Okay? Will you sign a BRA? Same thing, you can ask the same questions again. And there's only one thing about the BRA, but just let me check here. No problem, but Dad, talk to you later. Thanks. Will you sign a BRA? And guess what the answer usually is? The answer is usually no. And then what a lot of agents do is, okay, well, no, you should say, why not? Okay, why don't agents ask why not? Why won't you, Mr. Buyer, sign a BRA? And I'll tell you the answer. Most agents don't say why not because they don't know what a BRA means. They don't understand what it says, all right? If you want a lesson on a BRA on our YouTube training channel, you get yours truly, me, teaching you about every paragraph, what a BRA says, and I highly recommend you watch it. But they're going to say, and the most common one is, and I know most of you will have run into this, the most common answer is, well, I heard if I work with the listing agent directly, I'll get a discount because they're going to give a discount to their seller because they'll reduce their commission if they double end the deal. We've all heard it, okay? So what do you do? For some reason, didn't go back, I don't know. But anyways, so if I understand you correctly, if you're thinking that if you work with the listing agent, you'll get a better price. Is that right? Yeah. Well, I understand exactly where you're coming from there, because if I was thinking about buying a house and I had heard that if I work with a listing agent, that I'll get a discount on my home price because they're double ending it, I think I might lean towards working with that listing agent too. And I guess that's what you're thinking. Is that right? It's only one answer, you guys. It's another yes. When you have those two yes answers, what happens? Once again, the objection wall comes down. This is Sales 101. So now can I share something with you, Mr. Buyer? Yeah, sure. Do you know the difference between a client and a customer? So let me explain to you what happens if you work with the listing agent, Mr. Buyer. When you work with the listing agent, the seller is the client to that agent, and you become what's called a customer. What that means is that everything that a seller tells that agent is confidential and cannot be revealed to you, Mr. Buyer. But what it means on the other end is anything that you say, Mr. Buyer, can be told to the seller. Okay? So you have to be very careful. So you may think that you're going to put in an offer of, for example, $890,000, and the listing agent has kind of steered you towards that price, even though they probably shouldn't be. But they've steered you towards that price, $890,000 on the $900,000 listing. And you, Mr. Buyer, are going to honestly believe that you got a $10,000 savings because the listing agent is double ending her commission and has reduced the commission by 1%, for example, to the seller. But you, Mr. Buyer, will never know, because you are a customer, you will never know if the seller would have accepted $880 as an offer price, because the listing agent is under no obligation to tell you to try that. If you work with me, let's try something like that instead. That's how you overcome that objection to signing a BRA, you guys. And one more. Oops. One more. So I don't want to list during the holidays. Same thing. Repeat it back to them. You know, you don't want to list during the holidays. I understand. If I was the seller, I don't want to list during the holidays either. And then there's a whole script of what to do. So where can you find all these scripts? All of these scripts that I have just said verbatim to you are all in your Google Drive under scripts. They're all there for you to study. And when we're talking about scripts and negotiating, and I know some of you have heard me say this before, so please excuse me, but the way to practice scripts, and I just can't just wheel these off. Obviously I've done these many, many times, but how did I learn how to do scripts? I had a sales manager many, many, many years ago said, John, take this script, go into the bathroom, lock the bathroom door, look yourself in the mirror. And if you can convince yourself, you can convince anybody else. And what'll happen, folks, is that you'll look in the mirror and you'll try to do this script, and guess what'll happen? You'll break out in sweat, your underarm deodorant will break down, you'll die, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll go, why is John making me do this kind of thing? And guess what? After a few tries, you'll get better at it, and you'll be able to say it with a straighter face, more convincing. And when you can convince yourself in the mirror, you can convince anybody else. Final tip in negotiating. Find a common ground. Be relational, okay? If you can be friendly, if you can find out that who you're having a problem with, that their kid goes to the same school as your kid goes to, something as simple as that, that you both love or hate the Maple Leafs, find some kind of a common ground. If you can be relational with the person that you're talking to, you're going to find it so much easier to find that place where the negotiations are just going to be so smooth. It's going to make all the difference in the world. Or else you're just butting heads, you guys, and you're kind of nowhere because you don't understand where the other person is coming from. So try to find a common ground. Be relational.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like our video, please hit the like button, the subscribe, and even the little bell to get notifications, just so you can stay in touch and watch more of these great videos.